Imagine a quiet rural settlement in 19th century New Zealand. The land was still raw, carved by rivers and thick forests, with scattered homes of settlers trying to make a life on the frontier. But one night in late 1863, terror struck. A Maori man named Ruarangi would forever etch his name into colonial history through one of the most shocking crimes of the age: the brutal killing of Mrs. Thompson and her young daughter at Kaukapakapa, in the Kaipara district. This is the story of what led to that moment, the crime itself, the gripping trial that followed, and the grim fate of Ruarangi. A story that reveals not just murder, but the deep tensions between Maori and European settlers in a fragile young colony. Before we begin, if you love uncovering hidden dramatic moments from history, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment with your thoughts. It really helps us bring you more stories like this one. The 1860s in New Zealand were turbulent. The New Zealand Wars had broken out between the Crown and various Iwi tribes. Fear and suspicion filled the air. Many settlers in Auckland and its surrounding districts worried that any small dispute might ignite into wider violence. Into this atmosphere walked Ruarangi, a Maori man known in the Kaipara district. He lived among both Maori and settlers, sometimes working, sometimes wandering. Contemporary reports described him as unstable, volatile, and prone to bursts of anger. To the settlers, he was already a figure who inspired unease. Tensions over land, resources, and authority fed mistrust. While most Maori in the district lived peacefully alongside their Pakeha neighbors, rumors spread quickly in colonial newspapers. A single violent act could be portrayed as part of a larger native threat. Ruarangi, whether motivated by personal anger or something darker, would soon cross a line that could never be undone. It was December 1863, at the settlement of Kaukapakapa, north of Auckland. In a small wooden home, Mrs. Thompson lived with her children. Her husband was away, leaving her to manage the household. That evening, as the family prepared food, Ruarangi entered the house. He was not a stranger. The settlers knew him. But what happened next turned familiarity into horror. According to court testimony, as Mrs. Thompson bent over to fetch sugar, Ruarangi lifted an axe and struck her at the back of the head. The blow was devastating. Her daughter, young and innocent, screamed in terror. But she too was struck and killed. The house that had been filled with ordinary domestic sounds moments earlier now rang with violence. Another daughter, however, survived. Despite the chaos, she managed to escape, fleeing into the night to raise the alarm. Her testimony would later become the foundation of the prosecution's case. Witnesses claimed that after the murders, Ruarangi made chilling threats. He allegedly declared that he would kill all the women in the house, and even went further, threatening to wipe out every white settler in the district, except one man. Whether these words were fueled by rage, madness, or bravado, they spread fear like wildfire. For settlers already living on edge, this was more than murder. It was a nightmare come true. The possibility that racial tensions could explode into open slaughter. The alarm was raised, and soon both settlers and Maori in the area were mobilized to find Ruarangi. Significantly, it was not just Europeans who pursued him. Local Maori too played a role in bringing him to justice. This showed that his act was not sanctioned or supported by iwi. It was seen as an individual crime. Ruarangi was eventually arrested and brought to Auckland for trial. The case drew massive attention. Newspapers in Auckland, Wellington, and even the South Island carried lurid headlines about the Kaipara murders. The trial began in January 1864. In the courtroom, the surviving daughter gave her testimony. Her words painted a vivid, heartbreaking picture of the attack. She recalled her mother bending to reach sugar, the sudden strike of the axe, the fall of her sister, and the threats Ruarangi shouted. The prosecution argued that the murders were deliberate and cruel. The use of an axe, the targeting of a defenseless woman and child, and the threats afterward all proved, they said, premeditation and malice. The defense had little ground. There was no serious attempt to deny the crime. Instead, some suggested that Ruarangi may have been unstable, mentally disturbed. But in 19th century colonial courts, sympathy for such a plea was rare. The jury took little time. Ruarangi was found guilty of willful murder, The sentence was death by hanging. The execution was set for April 1864. Hangings in colonial New Zealand were public affairs, spectacles meant to display justice and deterrence. On the appointed morning, Ruarangi was led to the scaffold. Eyewitnesses reported that he showed little emotion. Some accounts suggest he muttered words in Maori. Others said he was silent, resigned to his fate. The rope was placed around his neck. The crowd watched as the trapdoor was released. In seconds, Ruarangi was dead. For the settlers, justice had been done. For Maori in the district, it was a moment of shame and distance. His actions had not represented them, yet the newspapers painted the murder as evidence of native savagery. The Ruarangi murder case left a scar. On one level, it was the tragic killing of a mother and her child, a crime that devastated a family and shocked a community. But on another level, it became a symbol, used by colonial media and politicians to stoke fear of Maori violence during a period already charged with war and mistrust. The fact that local Maori had helped capture Ruarangi and bring him to trial was often downplayed in settler reports. Instead, the murders were framed as a warning that all settlers were at risk. Yet the case also reveals how justice in colonial New Zealand was shaped by both law and politics. Ruarangi was tried swiftly, condemned without hesitation, and executed in a matter of months. Today, looking back, the Ruarangi case is more than just a murder story. It is a window into a time when every violent act, whether isolated or not, could be magnified into a symbol of racial fear and frontier justice. The murders at Kaukapakapa remind us of the fragility of peace in colonial New Zealand. They show how one man's violence could ripple into a whole society, deepening divides and shaping perceptions for years to come. And at the center of it all was Ruarangi, a name remembered not for heroism, but for the axe that fell in a settler's kitchen one December night in 1863. The past never dies. It only waits to be told. Thanks for watching, guys. See you in the next one.